Before she was a headline, she was the woman who traded black tie nights for ice-crusted mornings. Sandy Pittman didn't wander into Everest on a whim. She'd been grinding for years. Alaska, the Andes, Africa, stacking peaks to chase the 7 summits. Not a rental gear tourist, a climber with a checklist and the stubborn streak to finish it. But the image stuck at first. Manhattan address, glossy magazine spreads, a sponsorship deal that looked slick on paper and loud on the mountain. To some, she became a symbol the minute a camera found her, too polished, too prepared to be seen. The socialite label did the rest, and it followed her like spindrift. She'd already taken 2 swings at Everest. Each time, she came home without a summit, but with more altitude in her legs and fewer illusions about the mountain. That matters up high. The death zone doesn't care who you are. It only cares how ready you are. Pittman knew the drill. Pace, hydrate, listen to the wind, don't race the weather. Still, optics can bury skill. A single prop, like a tiny coffee maker tucked into a pack, turned into a punchline, proof to critics that she brought comfort to a place that punishes comfort. Never mind the weight charts or the fact that climbers stash personal quirks all the time. Once a story hardens, facts struggle to thaw it. So, you've got 2 tracks forming before the storm even arrives. On one side, a determined climber with miles on her boots and unfinished business above 8,000 meters. On the other, a ready-made character for a media narrative about money, ambition, and the sale of Everest. Both tracks were set to collide on the South Col, and when the wind finally rose, people would remember the image first. But that wasn't the whole story. She didn't just carry down suits, she carried a newsroom. In 1996, Sandy Pittman joined Scott Fisher's Mountain Madness with a plan that felt futuristic. Beam daily dispatches off the world's highest ridge. A laptop, a sat phone, spare batteries, a tangle of cords. Pounds that don't help you climb, but did something else entirely. They turned the expedition into a live story. That tech cut both ways. To fans, it made Everest feel closer than ever. Fresh posts, camp-by-camp updates, a voice from the jet stream. To critics, it looked like branding on a burial ground. Sponsorship logos, media buzz, interviews before the summit was even in sight. The season was already crowded. Now it felt televised. Mountain Madness was built for big objectives. Fisher was charismatic, the team stacked with horsepower. Pittman wasn't the engine, but she was the antenna. Every successful send home reinforced a narrative. This climb was modern, connected, and confident. And that was the pressure. The more people watched, the less room there was for turning back. Not because anyone said it out loud, but because momentum has a way of writing its own script. Sponsors expect updates. Audiences expect an ending. On Everest, that expectation can creep into pacing, rest, and risk. Still, the plan seemed to hold. Camps were reached. Rotation settled the lungs. The summit window approached. If the mountain would just stay quiet for one more day, all the tech and talk would pay off with a clean shot at the top and a triumphant final post. Then the air thinned, the clock tightened, and a single choice put everything under a microscope. The short rope debate was about to begin. Summit day is the worst time to waste steps. That's why what happened between Lobsang Jangbu and Sandy Pittman still sparks arguments. For a stretch on the way up, Lobsang clipped Pittman to a short rope and hauled her through soft snow. Some say it lasted minutes. Others swear it went on far longer. On Everest, minutes matter. To outsiders, the image looked bad. A star Sherpa dragging a socialite toward the top. To climbers, it raised sharper questions. If Lobsang burned energy towing, how much gas did he have left when the weather turned? If Pittman got a boost, did it speed them up or slow the group down by draining a key guide? Context gets lost in clean narratives. Short roping isn't unheard of up high. Guides do it to steady pace, cut wind exposure, or push through a boggy section. Lobsang later said he was managing the line and the clock. Pittman didn't ask to be towed. She accepted help in a moment when pace meant safety. Then there's the timeline. Bottlenecks, late starts, and creeping delays were hitting everyone, not just one rope team. Oxygen plans frayed, radios crackled. People were pushing into afternoon, which is when the mountain starts choosing winners. Did the tow change the season's fate? Hard to prove, but it gave critics a symbol. Everest as a luxury product, hauled upward by invisible labor, and once a symbol sticks, it can outlive any weather report. That debate was still buzzing when the sky dimmed. The wind sharpened, landmarks vanished in a sheet of white. The rope question was about to be replaced by a bigger one. Who would make it back at all? The mountain went silent first, then it roared. One moment there were headlamps and fixed lines, the next a wall of cloud erased everything beyond an arm's length. Wind pinned people to the slope, masks iced. Radios turned into lifelines and rumors. Teams bunched near the South Col. Some were out of oxygen, some were out of bearings. Decisions shrank to inches. Crawl, clip, breathe, wait. In that chaos, Anatoly Bukrev moved. He left Camp 4 more than once, feeling his way into the storm, dragging the living back by touch and memory. Hours passed like years. Tents became triage. Pittman was among the survivors pulled to shelter, exhausted, frostbitten, alive. She didn't summit, she didn't lead, she didn't save anyone. She survived a night that erased veterans and rookies alike. On Everest, that's not nothing. By morning, the storm let everyone count. Some were missing, some were gone. Stories began forming even before the clouds cleared. Who pushed too late, who ran out, who saved whom. And once people reached base camp, those stories met the cameras. Survival was the end of the climb. It was the start of the narrative, and the narrative needed a face. Headlines needed a character, and she fit the frame. Wealthy, visible, wired to the outside world when most climbers went silent. Socialite on Everest was an easy shorthand, and shorthand travels faster than nuance. Soon the punchline wrote itself. The woman with a cappuccino machine on the roof of the world. Never mind that it was a tiny stovetop gadget, the kind climbers toss in for morale. The meme won. Images did the rest. Glossy profiles, sponsor logos, tech on every table at base camp. In a season already inflamed by crowds and client culture, she became the poster child for commercialization. If Everest felt like a product, she looked like the ad. That single role swallowed everything else. Her years of training, her previous attempts, even the fact that she didn't reach the top. Then the stories started clashing. One account painted her as dead weight. Another said she kept moving and followed orders. A third insisted the real problem was timing, not one person's pace. But when audiences latch onto a symbol, corrections land like whispers in a storm. The label stuck. Not just a survivor, but a reason. The internet was young, hungry, and ruthless. Message boards, talk shows, quick hits on morning news, all amplifying the same angle. She brought comfort where grit belonged. She wanted attention where humility was sacred. In that chorus, intent didn't matter. Optics did. And yet, contradictions kept surfacing. Guides who pulled people from the dark said she helped where she could. Teammates remembered a climber who had bad hours, then rallied. Even her detractors admitted the storm humbled everyone. The narrative didn't bend. Years later, new voices revisited the footage, the logs, the timelines. Different take, different blame, different weight on who made which call. That's when the pendulum started to swing, slowly and not without pushback, which brings us to the fight that never really ended. The climb ended. The argument didn't. After the storm came the books, and the first one set the tone. Early tellings drew hard lines. Heroes, mistakes, a few names under a spotlight. Then came the counterpunch. Guides and teammates published their versions, defending choices that looked harsh on paper, but made sense in thin air. The debate got teeth. At the center of it all, who moved when, who waited where, and why some decisions that seem obvious at sea level look different at 8,000 meters. Bukrev's approach, fast, light, no mask, was either reckless or the reason anyone lived to tell it, depending on which page you turned. That split spilled onto talk shows, lectures, and climbing forums for years. Pittman's role traveled with the controversy. One camp saw her as the emblem of a new Everest, sponsored, wired, too public. Another camp pushed back, experienced, determined, and caught in the same perfect storm as everyone else. Small details became litmus tests. Was the cappuccino machine a morale trinket or proof of excess? Was the short rope a brief pace fix or a symbol of being hauled uphill? Each answer redrew the map. Time didn't settle it. Movies condensed timelines, documentaries hunted for villains, new interviews reopened old wounds. Every retelling tightened one thread and loosened another. And when fresh audiences discovered the story online, they brought new verdicts, some exonerating, some doubling down. In the end, the fight wasn't just about one climber. It was about what Everest had become, a summit you could buy into, a dream marketed in glossy spreads, a place where skill and money and luck collide. Pittman happened to be standing at that crossroads when the weather erased the exits. But arguments are opinions, records are records. So, what does the paper trail actually show? Strip the chatter. Look at the paper trail. Pittman logged years of big mountain days before 96. Denali, Aconcagua, Elbrus, Vinson. Multiple Everest attempts. Not a one-trip wonder. On summit days, she moved with the Mountain Madness line, accepted a brief tow through drifted snow, and later turned back as the clock and weather closed in. When the whiteout hit, she was among those stranded near the South Col. Through the night, guides went back out and hauled survivors in. By morning, she was frostbitten, shaken, and alive inside a tent because someone reached her in time. The other details that got twisted. The cappuccino machine was a tiny stovetop pot, more mascot than luxury suite. The sat phone and laptop weren't toys. They were how dispatches reached home, the same way plenty of expeditions now send updates. Her pack wasn't a rolling cafe, it was a climber's pack with a morale item and a lot of batteries. What you don't find in the logs is a cartoon. You find a client climber with real experience who struggled like many that day, followed instructions, and survived a storm that dwarfed everyone's plans. That doesn't make her a hero. It doesn't make her a villain. It makes her a witness to a season that exposed every crack in the system. Crowds, timing, oxygen, pressure, pride. And after the storm, the record keeps going, quietly. She wrote, then receded. The headlines faded, the arguments didn't, which leads to the last turn in this story. When the cameras moved on, she did too. No talk show tour, no victory lap. She published, answered what she had to, then slipped back into a quieter life. Projects, family, distance. The arguments kept echoing in climbing circles and online threads. She didn't jump in. Every few years, the story resurfaced. New films, fresh think pieces, recycled myths, and her name reappeared like a reflex. She stayed mostly off stage. What changed wasn't her voice, it was the context. As Everest grew more crowded and commercialized, the old narrative looked less like one person's fault and more like a system under strain. The mountain kept collecting headlines. She let the mountain keep them. Which leaves the story where it started. Not with a villain, but with a mirror. Stripped down, it's simple. A determined climber with real miles. A storm that outmuscled everyone. A season primed for blame. Optics turned into judgment. Judgment turned into folklore. And folklore is sticky. Maybe that's the uncomfortable part. Everest doesn't just expose lungs and legs. It exposes stories we like to tell about who deserves to be there. Wealth, ambition, attention. We needed one face to explain a disaster built from weather, timing, and crowding. She fit the template, so the template won. But the record doesn't crown a mastermind or a menace. It shows a survivor caught in the same whiteout as the rest. Rescued, criticized, remembered for the wrong prop. If there's a lesson, it isn't about a cappuccino pot. It's about how quickly a headline can bury a person. So, was Sandy Pittman truly the most hated woman of Everest? Or the easiest script the moment demanded? That answer says more about us than it does about her.